me some.
Figured it out.
Did you turkey hunt in?
Man, I sat in the woods for 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. on Sunday. I was dead set. It was the last day I was going to be able to really hunt, and I had been chasing like these 3 toms in El Paso, and I just could not get him to commit. And
I refuse to sign it. You get my age, you can't sit that long and walk the next day.
boy, I barely could. Like I didn't think I was going to be sore, but it was a rough. I only got to hunt like a week. I'm Belize first week.
That's a good problem. Just you can turkey hunt in Belize.
Yeah.
Was it business or pleasure?
Man, how are you, sir? Very good. It was pleasure, just having fun.
Did you go to the Blue Hole?
No, we didn't go to the Blue Hole, but
So I'm older than Peter.
we did some murder calls and we did some some tubing.
Yeah. Found some black sand.
It's yeah, it was man. It was fun.
Tell him I feel better.
So it's a little, almost like an island.
Yeah.
And we had our own private house and private beach. And, we want
If I make it to May 2nd, I'll be 61.
package of the banquet that included. I didn't even know it included shit. So we had something cooked. All meals.
That's what I'm looking for.
Everybody tells you it doesn't hurt.
That's what I'm looking for. It's the way to go. It's the way to go.
Pool at that.
There you go.
You know,
Turn
this
60
this time of
first
year.
November.
The reason it hurts fast because I get up in the paper every day. There's people my age every day dying. So I look at the obituaries
More and more.
I look at the obituaries, the divorces, the bankruptcy. If I'm not one of those that's proven today.
And so
In 25 and 50 year ago, and now I'm starting to look at the 75.
Yeah.
It's getting close.
First up, we have the Homeless Task Force. The Homeless Task Force was put together by the mayor's office January of last year. Is that right, Judy? April, okay. Well, I knew sometime last year. April of last year. And what it is we brought all the nonprofits together, and they sit down and meet once a month and talk about issues with homelessness in Conway. And they have a direct connection to our office with Kiera and Felicia, and it's worked out, I think, pretty well. But that being said, I appreciate the job that each of you do. And Judy, are you going to speak tonight?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
As Bart said, we were put together in April of last year and basically invited all the nonprofits that work with the homeless, that serve them in some way. And there were a couple that don't really participate, but generally it's the ones that you would think of. You know, it's Bethlehem House, it's Capca, it's United Way, it's the Ministry Center, it's the Women's Shelter and City of Hope, Soul Food Cafe, Salvation Army. I don't think I missed any. But in addition, we have a couple of community volunteers that meet with us and kind of bring a different perspective. And that's Vicki Crockett and Robert Wright meet with us. And then Felicia and Kiera, and then Latricia from the police department. So there is a lot of benefit from working directly with the city in this. And our goal is really to understand the needs of the homeless and to meet them, to better meet them. And so there's lots of ways to do that. And we're going to talk about a few of those ways we've gotten started, but I really want to talk about the point in time count first. For years, we have done the last 10 days of January a count of the homeless all over the United States, and it's a requirement for from HUD for anybody who gets HUD funding. In 2009, and I'm just going to hit some highlights, we counted 173 homeless individuals, and this included students. And it wasn't just in Conway. It was in Conway and Bologna, and it was in Faulkner County generally. In 2016, the HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, decided they would get the number of students and provide that to us. Well, they don't provide it to us, but theoretically they gather it. So in 2016, we found 189. Now, there probably are not 5 outside of the city since we quit counting students. So 173 in the county in 2009, counting students, 189 in 2016, not counting students. So in 2018, this year, we found 220 homeless individuals, not counting the students. So that's a 16% increase in 2 years. And just for an idea, the city of Conway, or the Conway Public Schools, say that they have 85 homeless students at the time that we asked them, so this past winter. That's a big number, and it's obviously something that we have to work on. And I think the mayor's office has seen that, and so there are lots of things that we're doing. One of the things that we have done recently is the judicial system, our local judicial system set up Compassion Court at Bethlehem House. And Compassion Court is really an opportunity for defendants with misdemeanors to address their issues outside of the court. Many times they're afraid to go, they're afraid they'll be arrested. They just have this, you know, even there, we had 12 people sign up, and one of the ladies refused to come back and see the judges. She just sat out front, and she got so scared she just couldn't do it. Although her husband went back and came back with good news. But one of the impacts that the judicial system or that legal issue has is that if an individual gets a large fine, if for some reason they have a failure to appear, that just continues to build. Those dollars just continue to build. So it absolutely impacts their housing. So Judge Braswell, Chuck Clausen, Judge Reynolds, the prosecutor's office, the public defender's office came out, and as I said, there were 12 people signed up. 11 people they saw. Out of those 11 people, 10 of them they were able to help. The other one really wanted a divorce, and you're not going to get that sitting at Bethlehem House. So those 10 people that came out of that room were helped with lowered fines, with knowing they could go into the courthouse without being arrested, with maybe swapping some of those fines for community service, but it helps them maintain housing as they also are able to pay their fines. So there are lots of root issues, and we were talking today, probably the two biggest ones are mental health and addiction, and they're the hardest, but it doesn't mean we're going to be able to ignore them. So we will get to there. But this is just one way. Hema Quintana from CAPCA is going to talk about Project Homeless Connect next. So.
Thank you, Judy.
Good evening. How are you guys? This year we held our second annual Project Homeless Connect in Faulkner County on January 23rd, 2018. The first official Project Homeless Connect was held in San Francisco in 1998, and the Connect events are designed to connect individuals and families that are experiencing homelessness to services that they might have difficulty accessing on the streets at no cost to them. So with a lot of collaboration, we were able to serve 123 homeless individuals this year at Project Homeless Connect. We had 35 businesses and organizations that were represented by 158 volunteers. Some of the services that were provided was Compassion Court. We also collaborated together to host Compassion Court there. We had haircuts, dental screenings. Follow-up care was also provided and paid for after the event. There were health and vision screenings, pet care services. That was something new this year that we were able to introduce. There were applications taken by DHS for SNAP, T, TANF, ORCIDS, and Medicare. We provided resource guides and referrals for different services, care kits, winter gear kits. Everyone received a hot meal, and there were also shoes available. And just really briefly to close, I want to share a success story from the event. Came in contact with a gentleman named Stuart Sanders that was released from prison on the 18th of January, just a few days before our event. He did see a flyer for Project Homeless Connect, and he called to see if he would qualify for the services. He was inquiring about work boots specifically, and I advised him that he qualified, encouraged him to attend the event where we could talk more. He did come to the event, and we set up an appointment for the next day. During that interview, Stuart mentioned to me that if he had steel-toe work boots with no laces, he could secure a job at Verco as an experienced welder. So we made accommodations to get the boots, and we delivered them to him the next day. He started working at Verco the next week, and when I was visiting with him to follow up, I asked if there were any additional services that he received from the event that had aided in his transition. And he said that the haircut provided by Smart Clips and the adjustment from the chiropractor helped him feel better and more confident. And then he also was able to get 2 teeth pulled from St. Vincent's Interfaith Clinic, and that was paid for by donations made to Project Homeless Connect as well. What was really encouraging is when he advised that there was a sense of community at the event that gave him hope, and it made him feel like he had a safety net. And he is definitely striving to make an important contribution to family, community, and the world. And right now, he's been employed for over 90 days and has recently transitioned to his own home, and he's excited to be a contributing member of society. And next, Ms. Vicki Crockett is going to speak about our employment committee.
I'm going to start with a little philosophy. One of the things that we decided early on when we got together as a task force was we needed to keep in mind the intrinsic dignity and worth of every person. Every person has value. And that's important when we're providing services, not we're providing services, when the agencies are providing services, and when we're creating programs, we're making plans, that remains the center of what we do. And we also need to give that back to that person as well, to allow them to affirm their personal dignity. And part of that was through short-term things, like where can they find showers, where can they find hygiene kits, how can they get haircuts, how can they do things that make a difference. And one of the areas that we wanted to approach was a longer-term approach with employment. Employment improves the economic situation of a homeless person, which obviously would lead you on a path out of homelessness, but also affirms their personal dignity. And I'm going to quote Philip Fletcher here on something that he kind of wrote up about it. It is vitally important for men and women, especially those who are homeless, to find exposure to work opportunities which offer the greatest possibilities to reduce societal alienation, improve economic opportunities, and affirm the dignity of homeless men and women. So with that in mind, we set up a workforce committee within the task force, and we wanted to have a program where the committee could recommend people for employment, and we could work with large employers in the city to have jobs set aside or jobs identified that would be available for the people who are recommended by the task force. We started with the city itself, because if the city were a leader in the program, then it would be something that could be a model for other employers in the city of Conway. So Felicia contacted Memphis and talked about a program that they had there. Theirs was more of a day laborer program, and they paid in cash. We came back to the city. That didn't fit their needs. That wasn't what they needed, because you can't hire someone you don't need, right? So we want to make sure we had a good match on both sides. So we went back to the city, find out what they needed. They needed long-term employees. They needed some seasonal workers, but also long-term employees. So we put together a program where the city could identify positions that were available and would be not held open, but would be identified as positions for homeless individuals to apply for. And on the task force side, we would have agencies fill out a assessment form of each person that they were recommending in terms of dependability, previous experience, how committed they are to being on time, all the kind of things you would look for in someone who would make a good employee, because obviously we don't want to recommend somebody who's not going to work out in the long run. That doesn't help anybody. So we had agencies fill out assessment forms for applicants that we then handed to the city for them to consider, along with the other applications that they received for the positions. They weren't guaranteed the job, but they came into the job with an additional recommendation from the task force. On behalf of the committee, I will report that we recommended 4 applicants to full-time positions with the city, 2 in grounds maintenance street department, 2 as a refuse collector in the sanitation department. The applications and recommending organization assessments were submitted to the city, and the next step will be for the applicant to go through the interview process to be considered for the position. 1 position as groundskeeper sanitation was withdrawn by the city, and the 2nd collector position was added instead. 1 applicant was not recommended. His current status participating in the program or the recommending organization was unknown. He'd kind of dropped off the wayside, and so we weren't comfortable recommending him. There were 2 part-time seasonal groundskeeper positions in physical plant and 2 part-time seasonal grounds maintenance positions in parks and recreation, which did not have any applicants from the program and were opened back up to general applications. That is one of the things that we will kind of tweak for next time, is considering a balance of part-time and full-time positions. What we discovered in recommending people from the agencies is that people who were well known to the agencies that they felt comfortable recommending were required to be employed to participate in the programs of the agency. So they were coming from full-time positions, and they were often temporary positions, or they were often lower paying positions, so they were still very interested in making a move towards a more permanent position with the city, but they weren't interested in seasonal part-time positions. And so we're kind of looking at that. We have another whole year to work on it. So what we're kind of looking at that as balancing that out to meet the needs of the city, and also perhaps finding people who maybe need that half step up into a part-time position, but aren't involved with an agency to the extent that we would need them to be to recommend them, and so kind of what we do with that gray area there. So that's an area we need to look at. At the moment, we do not know the result of the recommended applicants. The city will not be hiring until after May 1st. And so then we will get a report back from Felicia and Kiara on the status of the applicants. That's it.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Spring Hunter. I work over at the Ministry Center. And so one of the subcommittees of the Homeless Task Force is specifically set aside to work on a plan for emergency shelter. And one of our goals for this year was to create kind of an emergency plan for what can we do in the immediate future to get people housed this winter. We kind of started meeting in April, and we really wanted to have a plan in place by the fall so that we could guarantee a safe place for people to sleep during the coldest months. So we went to, we heard about a model in Little Rock called Family Promise, where the churches actually house people in the church buildings, and we went to visit them and hear how they operate and how their program operates, and we felt like it was something that we could bring back to the city of Conway, and maybe not move a group of people from church to church every week, but if the ministry center could temporarily shelter people in an emergency station, and the churches would come and serve and basically take care of staffing a temporary station for the winter. So we brought that back to the mayor's office, and we proposed that we open on December 24th and close on February 28th, because we found that it is extremely difficult to communicate to your homeless population during inclement weather. So we needed to have set dates and clear communication of when we would be available. We worked with the city fire department and the Conway Police Department to establish warrant checks and a safety protocol for our guests that would be staying with us. And we did, in fact, get permission to open on the 24th. And so Christmas Eve, we launched. We were open for 9.5 weeks. We had 15 churches that participated in keeping our doors open. We had well over 400 volunteers that served in that 9.5 weeks, from cooking meals to coming and serving food to doing housekeeping, to staying there, providing security for us at night, helping our guests with transportation, you name it, they did it. We hired an on-site manager that worked for us for the 10 weeks in preparation, that was there with us for 14 hours a night. And so over the period of the 9.5 weeks, we did house 104 unique homeless persons that came through during that time period. So that was our winter warming station. We felt like it went really well. We had an overwhelming response from the community. We had other organizations involved. We had local businesses that contributed. So it really was, as far as a test pilot goes, we really felt like it was very successful. And so they also asked me to kind of talk about future plans for a potential homeless shelter. So kind of what we've been looking at over the year is who would run the homeless shelter, who does the Homeless Task Force recommend. So our first choice is to invite someone to our city that has done it before, that already has a protocol, that has established a new, from scratch, what does it look like to launch a homeless shelter. And so we have invited the Salvation Army. We have been in communication with the regional district office to visit with us, and they have sent us proposal forms. So basically, we're just getting started with inviting them to look at Conway to open a Salvation Army homeless shelter. And as the backup, the Conway Ministry Center is prepared to make that commitment, but we want to make sure that Salvation Army is not a solid first choice. So right now, those two agencies have been identified. We also have been looking for locations. I know that's been just the big, huge question for Conway is what is an appropriate location for a shelter. We've looked at a property over at, the address is 1116 Gum Street, which is behind Burger King and Hobby Lobby. There's kind of an L-shaped apartment-looking or motel-looking building that we've kind of assessed and drafted up some sketches of what that might look like. And so I think that's an area that we're looking at. And you know, after meeting with Salvation Army and the people that need to be in on those conversations, we might bring that location up at some point. So I think we really want to invite you guys to ask questions back to the Homeless Task Force if there's any questions or comments or clarification that you guys have. We'd love to take those.
Anyone have any questions?
How big would the shelter be if you were pie in the sky? How many beds?
So that particular location, just putting a sketch to it, well, the fire department will tell us how many beds we can have. That's the answer. But we looked at maybe launching with 30 beds to start with. I think if the ministry center were the one that ended up taking the shelter piece, we would probably want to start smaller and make sure that we have real appropriate daytime programming and a good work program to accompany that. So I think we're looking at probably 30 beds. Salvation Army may come back and say, nope, we can put 50 people in there. But we tentatively thought about 30.
And you said the term long term. Can you define that for me?
So I think what we mean when we're talking about long-term is the opposite of a winter warming station. This place is here to stay. Not that our homeless population would stay in a homeless shelter long-term. Our goal would be to get them involved in programming and get them out of homeless, but that there would be a long-term shelter for anyone who's homeless to be able to come to instead of moving it or opening on December 24th and closing in February 28th.
So from the February 28th closing time until the next time it opens, no one lives there, is that correct?
No, we would like to propose a homeless shelter for the city of Conway.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking for at this location, yeah.
Yeah, we toured the Gum Street property last week.
Okay.
I think that's a great location for it, with the businesses and all for working.
We think it's a good location from the perspective of the task force as well, because it's close to work, it's close to workforce, DHS, the CHI St. Vincent, the old Interfaith Clinic is close by. You know, you're not far from the Ministry Center in Bethlehem House. We think it's a good location as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Frank. I'd like to take my hat off to the Homeless Task Force. These folks work together quite well. Some of their meetings are very lively, but you know they're working for a common goal and working with the city. I'd like to recognize them. Of course, Judy Lively, who got up and spoke with Bethlehem House, Amy Prince from Bethlehem House, Philip Fletcher from City of Hope Outreach, Marette Cahill with United Way, Latricia Woodruff, Conway Police Department, Vicki Crockett, who's a community volunteer, Robert Wright of Independent Living Services, Debbie Hendricks of Salvation Army, Spring Hunter of the Ministry Center, Laura King of the Ministry Center, Hema Quintana of CAPCA, Carrie Curtis of the Women's Shelter, Tracy Harvey from Soul Food Cafe Mission, Kiera, and I cannot pronounce your last name, Kiera, Office of the Mayor Representative, and Felicia, Office of the Mayor. And I'd like to tell you, Felicia and Kiera, hem me up once or twice a week to bring me up to speed on what you guys have. Yeah, you could not have a better representation for our office. They don't turn me loose. So anyway, thank you all for the job you're doing. It's very, very much appreciated. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. And, Little Rock has often been known as the meanest city in the United States for homeless. And I think the city of Conway is doing a great job to never get even close to that reputation. And it's because of the leaders in this community. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right. Next, we'll move on. What time is it? See how we're doing on time. Good deal. Y'all did, boy, 27 minutes. That's impressive. All right, next up, we're going to talk about Markham Street. I'm just going to give y'all some facts and figures, and then we can vote to, or y'all can decide here in the council meeting how you want to proceed. Metro Plan has given Conway a $2.85 million grant. They currently have invested $200,000 in design fees. The city has a 20% match, which is $713,000, and we have currently spent $70,000 into design fees. We are 90% complete on our design. Any construction over budget will be paid by the city. Conway Corp cost of Phase 1 is $2,030,663. This is for underground starting at Oak Street, running underground for a way, then they'll go above ground, but it'll be a block off of Markham Street, and they will take that to Mill Street. That's Phase 1. Phase 2, which will start at Mill Street and end up by Henry's College, will cost Conway Corporation $3,120,373. The Phase 2 cost of the city on our end to take it from Mill Street north is estimated at $2 million. Phase 1, we've included landscaping, streetscaping along Chestnut Street, right there starting at Oak Street, because we were going to have to cut the street up for the drains, the retention pond, Mr. Grimes, and then Conway Corp's got to bring their water and sewer and power, everything in there. So we didn't want to just piecemeal it back together, so we decided to go ahead, start at Oak Street and do that one block section of Chestnut and go ahead and streetscape it and put it back like the rest of it. The total cost of Conway Corp for Phase 1 and Phase 2 is $5,151,036. Total cost of the city, Phase 1 and Phase 2 would be $2.7 million. Now, Conway Corporation has a certain amount of dollars that they set aside for projects for the downtown public interest district, and they are willing to use this money for this, but they want us to understand, and I'll ask Mr. Carroll, Mr. Duff, they'd like to speak, that once they use this money, it will be sometime in the future before we'll be able to ask them to partner up with another project with us. Is that fair, Mr. Carroll? Yeah. Okay. So that being said, I'll open the floor. I'll answer any questions I can, or Mr. Carroll can answer any if y'all have any.
How's everybody doing? Good. Just to clarify, we did a strategic plan a few years back, and our board realized that, we needed to do some things downtown to make downtown look better. And it's continued to be a part of our strategic plan. And so what they agreed to do was to allocate about 1.5% of our operating revenues in the electric department, which is about $900,000 a year. So if we do the Markham Street Phase 1, that pretty much commits us for about 2.3 years. So we're done for about 2.3 years in terms of what we can do downtown. And then Phase 2 is about 3.5 years. So I just wanted, Bart thought you guys might have some questions of us about that. So we wanted to be here if you had any, and I just wanted to kind of clarify that piece as well. So
That does concern me a little bit, that we would be committing everything that y'all might be able to help with in the future. That's a
well,
big commitment.
it's really just what we would specifically do related to the downtown public improvement district. So really, that's what it is.
So
But on the flip side, though,
how much
you
is,
got to use it for something.
Yeah.
This has been identified for a while, and this is as good as any.
have you accumulated money so far for that, that's like sitting in a fund waiting?
No,
or
we have an annual
you
budget.
spend it as you?
We have an
okay.
annual budget that's allocated for that. And so basically, if we do this, then our budget we're committed for the next 2 years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And Bart, I had one question. I just want to make sure I've got the numbers right. For our part in Phase 1, does that include the 713 match?
Do what
Or
now?
is it in addition to?
No.
that?
That's everything. That's
Okay,
not addition, right?
so that would include the match?
Is there any other projects downtown that would give us a better bang for our buck?
We had talked about that. I know that there's the possibility, nothing's definite for sure right now, that we might want to look at Court Street, Prairie Street, and Chestnut in that area. We talked about Oak Street, but after visiting with Brian and Finley this morning, we talked about, I think the highway department will not, if we move the power off that, they're really not going to allow us to put sidewalks or anything along Oak Street. Did I hear that right?
They've taken an anti-sidewalk stance lately, and that's really kind of totally opposite of what we want to do on Oak Street. So it's definitely more long-term project, more convoluted, really, another problem than others.
Finley did say that Oak Street was not on the STIP extension. So, is Finley here? That's correct, Finley?
While he's coming up, how much of the costs that are not the Conway Corp cost, because that's kind of the underground stuff, how much of the construction side on the city is included in here? It's not everything in here, because it would be a lot more than that, wouldn't it, from the original?
I think that's a Conway Corp question, if I understand your question correctly.
No, the non-Conway Corp part.
Oh, I'm
You know,
sorry.
the things that we outlined in the original Jumpstart plan.
Yeah, 2.8 million of that will be covered by the
Okay.
Metro Plan.
I guess, maybe, let me ask it a different way.
Okay.
Can we have like just a bullet list of, for this amount of money, this is what we get? That's the part I'm having a difficulty. You know, we talk about, you know, the Markham Street development. Well, what does that mean?
It's really
Yeah.
all roadway improvement.
Okay, roadway, but does it include the detention?
No.
Okay, so that would be in
The-
those are the kinds of things.
Detention's a standalone project.
Okay.
We've got to do it no matter what.
So it's just taking the street, doing the underground, utility improvements.
The 2.8 million doesn't pay for any of the utility improvements.
Right, okay.
Yes,
And then making it a complete street?
correct.
And anything else?
Sidewalks and bike pathways.
Okay.
Finley, that appears to be an old concrete street. I'm
That's
guessing it's
correct.
overlaid with asphalt. So we're talking about having to
Dig it up.
basically dig it all up, start from scratch.
That's correct, and that's the reason.
That's the reason it's more costly.
That is, yes.
Yeah.
I came up here to talk about the highway department. It's, they've expressed a willingness to talk about, working with us on access management for Oak Street, but it's not in the current STIP, and it's not in the, doesn't appear to be making it into the STIP extension, which runs through, I think, 2022. So that's something that they're willing to talk about, but it's not near term.
And Harkrider's also 2021 or 2022.
So that would be after the 2 or 3 years of this project?
Yes, that would, so if my dates are correct, the soonest that would happen is 2023 and beyond, when they would be looking at Oak Street.
I know there, and I hate to call out a particular property, but on Van Runkle, right around the corner, going east, right around the corner from Markham Street,
Yes, ma'am.
there's a building there that has no water. Would this help with those buildings at all, or would that be something?
That's for you.
Does it get it closer
That's
for them?
I know you're talking
You
about the
know,
old warehouse
The
there.
Quattlebaum, yeah.
Yeah.
Does that get closer?
I don't know, Greg, do you have, can you come
No,
up and?
we'll still be a block away from that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I think it's
Okay.
still, and this would, I mean, to the extent that we could do that, we wouldn't be able to if we spent
Right.
money on this
Yeah,
kind of
and I'm not
project.
asking you to.
Yeah.
I just know that's come up before,
Sure.
that's a really great location and would be somewhere wonderful to develop.
And that's wastewater is what that is.
Oh,
The-
wastewater,
the-
okay.
There's a little alley behind all those shops in there that comes off of Markham. Right behind the old sewing machine store, there's a breezeway and water, runs up in there. Wastewater goes that way too, but there's a drainage ditch that the big ditch that goes through town and crosses. It's right underneath the building. And so the sewer can't come from that direction. It's gotta come from the other end, down by Fat Daddy's. And they just don't have sewer down that block. So no, this project would not include that. There will be some work along that street, and so we are looking at, is that a possibility? Because we have to loop the electric back in that way. We've gotta bring that's Harrison, I believe, but from, Markham down Van Ronkel to Harrison to get the electric, loop back in. And so we're going to be doing some digging in there, and it is possible
having
that
it
we could
Dug up.
do something, but that's gonna increase the cost of the project.
Any other questions?
I've got some, Mr. Carroll, if you don't mind. I heard you say that you have money built into your annual budget.
That's correct.
And then I heard you say downtown projects. Are those two things are tied together?
They're the same, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, what the strategic plan did was specifically identify downtown, the need to underground facilities or put them in alleyways, just make them where people walking down the road or biking down the road couldn't see them as easy. So that was really the plan. And so, we really weren't spending much money on that at all. And so they said, well, we need to make a commitment to doing that. And so that's where we look at our annual operating revenues in the electric department, and that's where the approximate $900,000 per year comes from. And that's an annual budget amount that we put in our budget.
So-
But it's for a footprint in downtown Conway.
So the 900K per year is the number
Yes,
that's
sir.
built in? Okay.
Yes,
That-
sir.
That's where I was headed
Yes,
with
sir.
that, was to see how
And
long it might take us to build something else up
Yeah.
if we had another project.
Yeah.
But now, this would not include, let's say we had another large employer that wanted to come into town.
Right.
Have you got another pot of money somewhere?
When you
that
say
could
come in,
help,
what do you mean come into town?
To bring 250 jobs to town?
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is
And
really
we
not.
needed some.
Yeah, this
we
is
needed
not,
some help.
this is not really connected to that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
everybody heard that as well.
Yeah.
You remember all the power poles that we used to have behind Baker Drug there in that alley?
Do.
Okay, that money cleared
Right.
all those
Yeah.
out of there.
Yeah, we spent, I guess, about $650,000 in 2016 and about $800,000 in 2017 on doing those kinds of things. Yeah.
Is there a particular geographic border for that money, or are you using it as an
Yeah.
improvement district?
Yeah, there,
little
no,
wider?
it's not really an improvement district. There is kind of a footprint.
Well, I know
There's
there is a business improvement district.
There's a
Oh.
map, and I don't remember the dimensions, Greg. Do you remember what they are? I mean,
That's
it's.
fine, it's
Yeah,
fine.
it's basically downtown. And then there is a map that we've designed that
Okay.
shows this is the DPID. And I'd be happy to send that to you, Shelley,
That'd be great.
if you'd like to get it, yeah. So,
Any other questions?
any other questions?
Thank you, Brett.
All right, you bet. Thank you.
We can, let's see, it is 6:10. Let's take about a 20-minute break.
Before we move on, since it was brought up, the retention pond / park.
Okay.
Once again, where are we on that?
On that project.
Mr. Vincent?
Well, I think that's I think that's a funding issue more than anything. Of course, there's been very little availability to, even if we had funding to do anything with that, because of the fact that this project brings the outlet to the scrapyard property. But at this point, the next step is to design it and then build it. But I don't think anybody's done anything with respect to identifying any funding for that.
So is it better to design and build that area after the street's done?
No, not
Or
necessarily.
is there,
I mean, I
I
think,
didn't know if there was a before or after.
no, not necessarily. As a matter of fact, this project, like I said, this project brings a large drainage pipe up to that property, which is necessary for that,
Whole concept to work.
exactly.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And according to Finley, the level, we don't have a lot of fall between what the retention pond's gonna be and when it actually hits the drain. So once it starts raining, that retention pond's gonna pretty well stay wet, keep water in it. We'll be able to drain it down somewhat.
So that could have an impact on what we do there for the rest, yeah,
Possibly, yeah.
how the park part looks, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we'll
And
give me back. Yes, sir.
One other thing,
Yes,
and our
sir.
portion of this money is coming from where? 2.7 million,
The 2.8 million's come from, Metro Plan.
okay. Okay.
Street department.
So I heard 700,000 for us, but then I heard another number that said 2.7, so that's already.
Yeah,
in the
2.8
original.
is what? Or,
That's the
sorry,
Metro Plan money?
2.7.
Okay, so we're only in for 700,000.
He also said-
20%, 2.85 million's coming from Metro Plan.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, Finley. Anything
Yes,
else?
sir.
We'll get back here at 6:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Thanks.
Yeah, my goal is.
Well, that's right. He's big about it.
got, what, 2 whole pages and over half of another one, so I'm well beyond the 30.
Each council meeting with a word of prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please feel free to join us if you'd like. Ms. Isby, would you?
Sure. If you'll bow with me. Our gracious Father, we thank you, Lord, for all the blessings that you've given us. We thank you, Lord, for the mindfulness that you've given us to be so inclusive within this community that you've graciously blessed us with. We just ask, Lord, for your continued wisdom and guidance in all of our endeavors, and we just continue to pray, Lord, that in everything that we do, that you get the glory. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now call this meeting to order. Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hawkins?
Here.
Mr. Grimes? Here. Mr. Pruitt? Here. Ms. Mel?
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter? Here. Ms. Smith?
Here.
And Ms. Isby.
Here.
All right. You should have received copies of the April 10th, 2018 council minutes. Any corrections or changes?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve as submitted. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. Next up, I'd like to take a quick break. As you all know, we have some very famous people here tonight. We have the UCA Sugar Bears, who, and you ladies, you've taken care of our community, you've done us proud, you've done the state of Arkansas proud. I went to the game, it was the final game, that was exciting. I really enjoyed it. Anyway, I'd like to read the proclamation. Your Honor. University of Central Arkansas women's basketball team Sugar Bears. Whereas the Sugar Bears were one of the 17 Division I teams out of 349 to win at least 25 games in each of the last 3 seasons, joining programs such as UConn, Notre Dame, Mississippi State, Baylor, and South Carolina. And whereas the Sugar Bears were the first Southland Conference team in 20 years with 2 straight 25-win seasons. And whereas the Sugar Bears have an overall record of 79, 19, 51-9 versus Southland opponents, 41-6 at home over the last 3 years. And whereas the Sugar Bears won the conference first Division I NCAA tournament berth, back-to-back appearances in 2016 and 2017. And whereas the Sugar Bears got the conference first Division I national postseason victory. I say that. Okay. Postseason victories in 2018 with the run to the WBI championship. And whereas the Sugar Bears broke Southland Conference record in 2018 for scoring defense, allowing just 50.9 points per game, finishing second in the nation. And whereas the Sugar Bears finished in the top 10 in scoring defense for the 3rd straight season. And whereas the Sugar Bears had 4 Southland All-Academic selections, 10 All-Southland Conference selections, South in defensive team selection and a Southland Tournament MVP. Okay. And the Southland Conference Coach of the Year award. Now therefore, I, Mark Council, Mayor of the City of Conway, do hereby congratulate and acknowledge all the achievements of the 2018 University of Central Arkansas women's basketball team. Ladies, they did a great job.
Thank you, this really means a lot, and I'm really proud of these players, and, thank y'all for all you do for us.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Yes.
So Mayor, we can let them leave and go study, is that correct?
I saw we had all those academic All-Americans. Yes, yes, go study.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Terry.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the monthly financial report ending March 31st. Mr. Winningham.
Numbers still continue to look good for us. Sales tax up just under 8% again this month compared to March of last year. For the year, we're up a little over 10%. So good things happening. Good things continuing to happen. Overall, the general fund not quite in as good a shape as it was last month, but that February sales tax is always a big dollar amount for us. So we kind of expected that things would continue to look good, but maybe not as good as they did at that snapshot in February. But if you look in the revenue section, there are our bigger revenue sources: the sales tax, the franchise fees, court fines and fees. We're all performing pretty well at or above budgeted projections. Ad val, we all know that doesn't come in until later in the year, so we don't expect that number to be high right now. And expenditures, again, all continue to be under budgeted amounts as far as the departments that are managed by department heads go. That non-departmental always throws us off, but dollar-wise, it's not that big of a piece that we bite off. Don't really have any other things to mention in the other funds. They're all in good shape. You may notice that some of the balance sheet numbers are different in the sanitation and airport fund. That's because we've recorded fixed asset additions, deletions, depreciation, and whatnot in preparation for the audit, which we're going through right now. So if those numbers jump out to you and look different, that's the reason why. That's all I've got, Mayor.
Any questions for Mr. Winningham?
I make a motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the monthly financials. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All those in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Winningham. Next, we have a report of our standing committees. Mr. Hawkins.
First item on this portion of the agenda, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution requesting the Faulkner County Tax Collector place a lien against property as a result of incurred expenses by the city. The first location in question, 2315 Wilmington Drive. Is there an owner or representative of an owner of 2315 Wilmington Drive in Conway with us tonight? Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone. We have a resolution to be read for this. It's Resolution R-18-14.
Make a motion for adoption. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this resolution to place a lien on property located at 2315 Wilmington Drive in the amount of $131.09. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7-0.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is another of the same type situations. This one is at 26 Briarwood Circle, $157.73. Is there an owner or representative of an owner from 26 Briarwood Circle with us tonight? 26 Briarwood Circle. Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone coming forward, so we have another resolution to be read. It's Resolution R 1815.
Make a motion for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution to place a lien on property at 26 Briarwood Circle in the amount of $157.73. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7-0.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance appropriating funds for the purchase of an aircraft tug for the Conway Airport Department. Mr. Zilks, I know you're going to tell us what an airport tug is and how come we need it.
All right. Good evening. So, as Mr. Hawkins said, we are looking for a new airport tug. This one is bigger than the one that we have. So this is a piece of equipment that we use to move aircraft in and out of the hangar, move them around, that kind of stuff. We do have one, the one that we initially purchased when we took over operations of the airport in September 2014, has a moving weight capacity of roughly 32,000 pounds. The one that we took bids on is a lot larger than that. We can move aircraft up to about 100,000 pounds, which matches our pavement weight rating for the airport. So this piece of equipment would allow us to move anything that is able to land on our runway. We would have the capability of being able to move it.
What would be able to land out there, Josh?
So 100,000 pounds gets you, covers any of the Gulfstream's Global Express, large, ultra-long-range business jets. If you've flown on a CRJ 700, CRJ 900 out of Little Rock, those are about 90,000 pound airplanes, regional jet size aircraft.
Okay, thank you.
We did take bids. We received 3 bids, ranging from the low bid of $29,500 from Advanced GSC Corporation. It met all of the specs. Our estimate was $32,000 to $35,000, so we feel good with this bid.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
Ordinance number, Mr. Garrett?
The ordinance number 01844.
44.
We have
Thank
a
you.
motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
It was 01844.
Thank you, Josh.
I would like to mention, a couple of months ago, we came and asked you about approving the upgrade to the weather system at the airport. We got that installed and operational this weekend, so with the weather that we had, it's been a good addition, and we're already hearing good things about that, so thanks for your support.
Good. Thank you, Josh.
Josh and his crew's been working really hard. They've been working the flower beds and the grass and everything else, their other jobs. They've really got the place looking good. Keep it up, Josh. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution expressing the willingness of the city of Conway to utilize federal aid surface transportation program funds. And Candy? Hello.
I get to represent it from an administrative point. Y'all all got your letters that we received from Casey Covington. And tonight was, they've got $2,852,000. They need $713,000 from the city. And what they'd ask us to do tonight is pass this resolution. And they had requested it by April 23rd, but knowing that we didn't have a council meeting to the 24th, they said that would be fine. So it's your decision.
I make a motion, we approve the resolution. Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the resolution to use the aid transportation funds for Morgan Street Jump Start project. Any further discussion?
This is what we discussed earlier.
Yes.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about.
Mr. Garrett?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you for your vote.
We needed an 8. We needed an 8. Thank
There's
you.
my tiebreaker, Randy. What's your name, young man? We're glad you're here.
We are glad you're here.
Mr. Hawkins.
I've been here 23 years. That's a first. I like that. All right, next. I'm sorry. Next is an ordinance accepting and appropriating donation funds for City of Conway Tree Board for Arbor Day. This is an accounting ordinance, and the ordinance number is 01845.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Miss Mel?
Aye.
Miss Smith?
Yes.
Miss Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property located along the north part of 2585 Donaghy Avenue from C2 to MF3. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on April 16th of this year, and at that time, the commission voted 8-0 to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to be read for this item. It is ordinance 01846.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0. Would anyone like to speak for or against this? Okay, we have passed 7-0.
I'll make a motion for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance rezoning property located at north part of 2585 Donaghy Avenue from C2 to MF3. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Miss Isby?
Yes.
Miss Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Miss Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
7-0. And Mr. Hawkins.
Final item here, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property located at the northwest corner of the intersection of Sturmer Road and Country Club Road. It presently is zoned A1. The requested zoning is an S1 zoning. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on April 16th of this year, and at that time, the commission voted 8-0 to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to be read for this item. It is ordinance 01847.
Make a motion to waive 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Anyone like to speak for or against this?
Hi, my name is Marty Jones, and I'm the director of Haven House, and unfortunately, I'm back. So I'll start with saying why I'm back. The current piece of property that we have that we had rezoned a while back, after we got that and had it rezoned and hired contractors and civil engineers and all the work that goes into that, we quickly realized how much it was going to cost to build on that piece of property to get through that rock. And it was something that we couldn't afford. Y'all are all shaking your heads. Something we couldn't afford to build on, and we tried really hard. So at that time, we started putting our feelers out to see if there was something else out there that would work for Haven. At that time, these 7 acres on the northwest corner, intersection of Country Club and Sturmer Road, came to us, and I think this will be a really great fit for Haven. It's a lot more space. It'll sit far back from the road for privacy, and there'll be a walking trail for the girls to ride their bikes and walk on, and our church we attend is next door, so we think this will be a really good fit for us. And we don't have any plans to change anything about the house. It will still look the exact same, just on a different piece of property.
I make a motion for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
Might be good to have a sidewalk installed from there to the church. I mean, if you'd have to cross another piece of property or so.
Great.
Mr. Garrett.
Be 01847. Miss Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Aye. Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Miss Mel?
Aye.
Miss Isby?
Abstain.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
6-0 with 1 abstention.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Next up, we have the Public Service Committee. First up is an ordinance appropriating funds for the purchase of a Bullard Eclipse camera for the Conway Fire Department. Bullard's still in business, huh, Chief? What are you limping for? Was the tennis match? Look, was the tennis match too much for you?
It's rough on me.
Mr. Sal is the one who took it
I
for
started saying.
the new
Fort
tennis
Rick.
facility.
We've received an insurance check for a little over $5,700 to replace one of our piece of equipment that we broke, thermal imaging camera, and we're just asking to appropriate that money where we can purchase a new one.
Make a motion to waive 3 readings.
Second.
Have a motion and second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
Motion and second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
01848. Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Pruitt? Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Smith? Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
7-0. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Next up, we have an ordinance to amend an ordinance, ordinance number 01837, relating to the low bid for the refurbishing of the concrete floors for the animal welfare unit. Ms. Bryce.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Aye.
We are asking you to amend ordinance number 1837. We were contacted by this vendor and we're told that they were no longer interested in this project, and we felt it was best for the city to go with the second lowest bidder.
Make a motion to waive the readings.
Second.
Have a motion and second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance number 49 along with the emergency clause.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause. Any further discussion?
What do you mean the first bidder decided, I've forgotten how you put it, but that they were not interested in this anymore?
They no-showed the first.
Did they offer a bid?
They did submit a bid.
Okay.
We scheduled them to come out to the site, look at the job site, and before they began work, they did not keep their appointment. And after talking to them, they told us that they were not interested in the job.
I'm assuming you'll file that in your memory bank for the next time they show up.
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Yes, sir.
Bryce.
Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
And the emergency clause, Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Those both passed 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Next we have,
Now, I used to work for Ryan Cordmeyer, so he doesn't show up, there's something wrong.
I don't know, oh yeah, talking about our next,
Oh, the
yeah,
new-
yeah,
the
no,
new-
he'll be there. Yeah, I guarantee you he'll be there.
He'll be there early.
Next, we have consideration to approve the disposal of vehicles and computer equipment for the Conway Police Department. Chief, you're not limping. What's going on with
I'm
you?
not. I'm perfectly fine. I had a good time playing this. I think I'm older than Chief Winter also. He's gone. He must have had to go to therapy. Yeah, we've got some assets we'd like to dispose of, some old IT equipment, computers. We will sell the salvageable items on public surplus. We also have added to this ordinance some Crown Victorias, about 4 Crown Victorias, and a wonderful Lincoln Town car we'd like to offer to the public.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve disposing of vehicles and computer equipment for the Conway Police Department. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7-0. Next, we have an ordinance appropriating asset forfeiture funds for the purchase of computer equipment and furniture for the Conway Police Department. Chief Spradlin.
Yes, this is this two-part. We're asking to use approximately $14,200 in asset forfeiture money. The first part of that, we're asking to purchase 5 tablets for our detectives. This will be purchased on a state bid. We had previously had a partnership with the U.S. Secret Service where we did a sex offender roundup here in Conway, where we verified that our sex offenders were properly registered, living where they say they were going to. And in return, the Secret Service bought us 5 laptops. So what we're asking for right now is to buy 5 more. That will give every detective that we have a laptop that they can take out in the field. Currently, they don't have any way to access our server or anything that's on their desktop, such as our patrol units do. So this will give them the opportunity to do that. We'll purchase these laptops. The second part of this, this is also as a result of our partnership with the Secret Service. We have 2 detectives that they have sent to Hoover, Alabama, and this goes back probably 6, 8 years ago, to do computer forensics, cell phone forensics. And we've done many investigations with that. In return, we have gotten well over $60,000 in free computer equipment to do these investigations. We have a makeshift office where we have put these 2 guys in, and we've kind of pieced their furniture together. We've got computers on the floors and stuff like that. So we would like to use asset forfeiture money to buy proper furniture for them, which will match the furniture in the existing building. We did take 3 quotes on that. The lowest quote is from Coleman Office and School Supply here in Conway.
Make a motion that we waive the readings.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
The O-1850. Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith? Mr. Pruitt?
Passes 7-0. We have an ordinance appropriating reimbursement funds from various entities for the Conway Police Department. Chief Spradlin.
I don't think there's anything new on here that you haven't seen before. General accounting ordinance. The last thing there is donations for the child safety fair we have every June.
Make a motion, we waive 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
Motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
The O-1851. Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt? Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Mayor, before we move away from the police department, I wanted to make sure you knew that the Conway Police Department was nominated for the UCA Service Learning Award. While they didn't win, they did receive a very strong nomination, and so Chief Spradlin was there last night for the ceremony. We really appreciate that.
And we appreciate the job you and your personnel do, Chief. Y'all do a really good job in this city. Folks feel safe here, and that's because of your department. And because of Mike's, I have to say that. Next, we have an ordinance to approve reclassifications within the Parks and Rec Department. Mr. Ibbotson.
We had a retirement within our department and some movement, and as it would be, it's at the perfect time of year for us when everything's running crazy. So what we're doing is reclassing a position, saving a little bit of money, and hopefully making it more efficient. And we're just asking for approval. It has no effect on the budget.
Do you need
And,
us to do an emergency clause on
please.
this?
Make
Yes.
a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0.
I make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance and also an emergency clause. And I have that as ordinance 52.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Emergency clause, Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Those both passed 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Ibbotson. Your department does a great job, too. People brag every day about how good things look in Conway.
Except when he busts their shoulders.
That's all we have tonight. We will probably have a committee meeting 2 weeks from tonight to discuss the non-uniform pension fund. We should have some things to bring to you guys before that. Any other business?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.